Imposter syndrome. The nagging feeling of not being good enough, not deserving the opportunity you've been given, not being smart enough to be in the room, let alone sit at the table, and that one day everyone will discover your secret, that you're a fraud. When it plays itself out, imposter syndrome can have a significant negative impact on your confidence, your self-esteem, and ultimately on your progress. So in this video, I want to help you beat imposter syndrome by sharing 3 things which I believe can help you to overcome it and stop feeling like it's holding you back in life. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Nick, and I'm a husband, dad, pops, certified coach, registered counselor, and trainer with tons of experience of helping busy professionals, high achievers, leaders, and entrepreneurs to improve mindset, emotional well-being, and performance. And on this channel, I share practical tools and ideas designed to help you succeed in life. So if you're committed to your ongoing personal development, you're in the right place. So take a second to subscribe and be sure to click on the bell icon so you can be notified of all future videos. Also, if as part of your ongoing personal growth, you'd really like more clarity about how you would like your life to look in the next few years, then download my free 5-step guide to creating your ideal future. I'll put a link to it in the description. So let me start by saying that if you struggle with imposter syndrome, you wouldn't be alone. There are several big hitters who have spoken about their own struggles with imposter syndrome, including prize-winning author Maya Angelou, who actually admitted to thinking to herself each time she wrote a new book that they, being us, are going to find out that she's run a game on everybody. And then there's Tom Hanks, who in an interview with NPR said, no matter what we've done, there comes a point where you think, how did I get here? When are they going to discover that I am in fact a fraud and take everything away from me? Now, I'm no Maya Angelou or Tom Hanks, but my own imposter syndrome has played out in various places, like in my client work, whilst I'm teaching, and when I received an award for being the most outstanding student of the year from university as a mature student. But I know it's not just me that it affects, as I hear it being talked about in so many spaces, by people from all walks of life, by leaders, parents, high achievers, pastors, business owners, students, entrepreneurs. I've heard the challenge of imposter syndrome being expressed by so many different people. So what is imposter syndrome? Well, imposter syndrome, originally referred to as imposter phenomenon by psychologists Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes in 1978, is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but in other words, it's basically a belief that you aren't as capable as others might think you are. So, knowing what it is, how do we go about addressing it? Well, let's take a look. Firstly, it's about recognizing how imposter syndrome shows up for you. So a first step to overcoming imposter syndrome is to identify what type of imposter you are, or put differently, to recognize how it shows up for you. So according to experts, there are 5 types of imposter, which you can probably identify by asking the right questions. Firstly, there's the perfectionist. Now consider this. Do you hold yourself to outrageously high standards, or do you think you're the only person who can do the job right? If you answered yes to these, you're probably a perfectionist. Second, there's the expert. Do you struggle with a sense of failure if you lack knowledge or skill in a certain area? Or are you consistently overthinking what you do or do not know? If that's the case, then you are likely the expert. Thirdly, there's the superhero. Do you believe you need to work more than others to prove your value and worth? Or do you place pressure on yourself to achieve in everything that you do? If that's the case, then you're likely the superhero type of imposter. Fourth, there's the naturally gifted genius. Do you feel like you've let yourself down when you fail to meet your high expectations? Or do you measure your success on how effortlessly you achieve something? If you do, then you would likely be the naturally gifted genius. And finally, there's the soloist. Do you consider asking for help a sign of weakness, failure, or confirmation of what you've been suspecting all along, that you're a fraud? Okay, so those are the 5. So once you've identified how imposter syndrome shows up for you, you can then move on to step 2, which is to challenge the way you think about it. Right, the second step to overcome an imposter syndrome is to stop thinking like an imposter. Dr. Valerie Young, an expert in imposter syndrome, describes this next step as being a non-negotiable for overcoming it. She explains that though there are several steps to being able to overcome imposter syndrome, without first changing the way we think, we won't even make it off the starting blocks. And this starts by changing our internal dialogue, the conversation in our heads. For example, instead of thinking, I'm not smart enough, we can start to think instead, I learn new things with every experience, or moving from I'm not good enough to I'm capable of doing anything with enough learning, coaching, patience, and practice. This shift in thinking, also known as reframing, is really important because to overcome imposter syndrome, you first have to think like a non-imposter. Non-imposters don't get hung up on mistakes. They consider them as learning opportunities. They also don't beat themselves up when they fail, but have instead developed a growth mindset which helps them to actually move on quickly with little to no impact on their confidence or self-belief. And if you saw the number of mistakes I made whilst actually recording this, you will see that I too still struggle with imposter syndrome. But you know, I'm happy to make the mistake, learn from it, and move on. And I think that should stay in. Thank you very much. Okay, before we get on to the third way to beat imposter syndrome, let me know if this video has been helpful in any way by clicking the like button. Your click lets YouTube know that I'm offering something of value. So do me a favor and click the like button now. Much appreciated. Right, the third way to deal with imposter syndrome once and for all is to change the way you act. So once you've identified how imposter syndrome shows up for you and have started to reframe how you think, a third step to overcoming it is to change your actions. Now, this is important because it doesn't matter how hard we try. What we might find is that our feelings won't change despite us wanting or needing them to. And if left to our emotions, we probably would never step out of our comfort zone or achieve anything much in life. So the truth is, you can't shake away or run away from feelings of anxiety about, I don't know, sitting an exam or attending a job interview or starting your first day on a new job. So because of this, despite it being a well-worn phrase, fake it till you make it still holds some weight in this context. In other words, it's important to take action despite how you feel, and just trust that your feelings will catch up with time. But if the phrase fake it till you make it sits uncomfortably for you, like I know it has done for me, try reframing it to act it until you become it. In other words, rather than viewing yourself as being fake, which will probably just reinforce any sense of being a fraud anyway, choose instead to see yourself as copying or mimicking the behaviors of non-imposters and high achievers. And by this, what I mean is to start viewing the behaviors of non-imposters or high achievers or high performers, people you look up to, as skills you can develop for yourself. For example, I remember as a black mature student at university amongst a group of predominantly white 20-somethings, believe me, I felt out of place. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like an imposter. So being aware of this, I decided that one of the ways I would overcome my imposter syndrome and this feeling of not belonging, I've decided that I would actually just start asking clarifying questions. I would speak up in lectures. I would paraphrase what lecturers were sharing to confirm my understanding. I would put my hand up when I felt uncomfortable doing so, because I saw these as signs of someone who was a high achieving student. And I'd also do things like arrive on time with enthusiasm about learning something new, rather than being held back by any sense of anxiety or nerves. Now, though these may seem obvious for some, for me, these small behaviors or skills were key to me becoming a high achieving student despite feeling out of place. And though I was a little scared and was concerned about feeling a little bit stupid from time to time, actually with a little bit of courage, I didn't wait until I felt confident or assured before acting like I was. I just did it. And you know what? It worked. It worked. Like I said, I came out with a first degree honours and an award for being the most outstanding student of the year. What can I say? But anyway, all jokes aside and enough about me, the idea here is that you too can choose to adopt the behaviors and practice the skills of those who seem to be achieving or doing what you want to achieve in the spaces where you want to be. See, what this looks like will look different for you than it was for me, but the skills and behaviors that you need to overcome your imposter syndrome and increase your chances of success can only be determined by you. So I would suggest and invite you to take some time to identify what they are so you can get started as soon as possible. Don't waste time, get on with it now. You've got a life to live and you've got things to do. Okay, there you have it. How to spot imposter syndrome and how to beat it so that you can have a greater chance of succeeding in life. Here's a brief recap. 1, recognize how it shows up for you. There are 5 types to choose from. So what I'd encourage you to do is ask some of those questions I shared earlier in the video and see which one really identifies with you. Secondly, stop thinking like an imposter. By paying attention to your internal dialogue, you can actually start to reframe your thinking so it becomes more helpful and less of a hindrance. And thirdly, change the way you act. Waiting to feel like doing something before doing it might result in you never actually doing anything at all, which would be a real shame. Right, we've reached the end, so I have a question for you. What's been your experience of imposter syndrome and how have you managed it? As you know, I love to hear from you, so take a moment to leave your thoughts or questions or responses in the comments. And also, if you found this video helpful and would like to support my channel, please like and share, and don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of future videos. Thanks so much for watching. Rooting for you. Be well.